Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Joyous Love Mondays with Anita. And today, our topic is Are you dating an ego? Now, the ego is a wonderful part of our character, the ego, the superego, the id. And I'm going to talk to you about all three of those today. But when we have an overdeveloped ego, it sometimes can be dangerous to our own personal growth as well as the world around us that we live in. Ram Dass said, "The ego is an exquisite instrument. Enjoy it, use it, just don't get lost in it." Ram Dass. So the ego has a way of perpetrating our sense of being and taking control of our character, our humanness, and taking this into the world we live in. And it can be destructive. Of course, we need it. We just don't want to get lost in it. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things here about the whole, what Freud talks about, the id, the ego, and the superego. Now, the ego is considered the false self. It's pseudo. So the ego is, if you have an overdeveloped ego, it is a person, it's someone that we create. So we create this so that others will like us. So on some level, we had a lot of losses in life, or maybe addictions, or abandonment, and we wanted to feel liked by others. So we create this ego. People that are abandoned from their family sometimes have an overdeveloped ego because it's a way of survival. Our true self is the I am. The ego comes after the I am. An ego is the part of us that is overoccupied with survival. Again, if you've been abandoned or child that didn't get much attention, it's overoccupied with success. It works to set an identity that sets us above everyone else. So again, when you're above everyone else, you're distant and you're disconnected from your body, your pain body, your emotional self. And that can reflect into your relationships with people in romance, your relationships with your family, your relationships in the world and work and whatever, but especially in intimacy and sexuality. I mean, I like a strong ego, but I also like it connected to the body. I like that balance to be there. The ego needs vampire. I mean, excuse me, vampire. It is vampire-ish, I meant to say. After when the ego, because it needs so much power and material gain and superiority, it's considered the hustle. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever heard of vampire-ish, when someone is a vampire. That person can have also an overdeveloped ego because they're out to get what they want. And it stems from some loss or selfishness. And again, you become distant from the body. And the body is why we're distant from it or disconnected, because there's pain. And that pain has to come to reality, to truth. So people that have an overdeveloped ego are avoiding their pain, and it's a void, but also they're not connecting to the aliveness, or maybe through the ego of creating this false self, it gives them that sense of aliveness, and it's false. Are you dating an ego? The hustle. They're never satisfied, these egos. They're never satisfied, these egoistic people out there. They're uncomfortable in the present moment. So we have to rebuild their present moment. There's a lot of exercises and activities to help them to calm down inside. The awareness of the present moment for the egoistic type of person is the death of the ego, is the death. So the awareness of the present moment is death of ego. And this can be, you know, if 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 the ego, if someone is has an overpowered ego, and they start to break down and they start to unfold, they may need a support group, because that ego is what's holding them up. That ego is what is who they have become, who they have created because of their fears, because of their abandonment, their conflicts, their denial, defensiveness, deflection, all of that stuff in their character over the years. Again, it's a survivor tool, but there's help for that out there so that you can have better intimacy, better love, and better connection with people, more open heart. And I know so many people out there that are overpowered in their ego, and they're constantly discharging anger, charging, discharging, and they have this way about them that is they're holding on. They're holding on. Ego's at play when obsessed in the past thoughts. The ego is also equally fixated on the future, like the next vacation, the next lover, but the perfect relatively that they may not happen. These things may not happen for them. So it becomes a fixation. And this fixation is like a drug sometimes. Now, of course, not every overpowered ego is has there's different levels, we'll say. So not everyone is stage 4, stage 3, stage 2, stage 1. There's different stages of the high powered ego. Ego loves control, certainty. Of course, we need to have that. I love using my ego to know that I have planned my week out. I have a sense of control of where I'm going, a sense of control in direction, a sense of who I am, my identity. But I don't want to disconnect or be distant from the feelings in my body that help me connect my heart to others. Egoistic people love attention. Now, look, let's face it, we all like attention, but the ego personality, they need more than the average person because on some level, they're trying to get to the feeling in the body. They're trying so hard, but they just don't know how. They need training of how to balance this out. Id, ego, superego. The ego hates the now, as Eckhart Tolle would say, the present moment. They love a good fight. They'll fight you. They're defensive. They cannot be criticized. They as Eckhart Tolle put it, is that it's hard to criticize them because they can't accept it. So you just have to accept and turn your head when the ego person, they don't respond well to the criticism. So they're defensive. So and their ego gets more strengthened as they become more defensive in their character, and it hampers their personal growth. Now, we are personally growing every moment, every hour, every day, every age. Doesn't matter what your age is, where you are in your life. We are always growing, folks. We are always growing. And the key here is that if we hamper that and not receive the criticism is healthy. It's not negative, okay, unless it's condescending or judgmental. But if it's constructive, you need to hear it. Now, the ego, we're already at war with the self. Everyone is at war with ourselves. So in order to complement yourself, to help yourself, you have a good thing to do, I'm suggesting, is to build practices of bringing the awareness to a grounded level. Reactive egoistic patterns that cause harm to us in our world are something we want to dissolve. So we want to build these practices of meditation or calmness, patience. But it's good to have someone guide you through this because the egoistic personality doesn't know how, doesn't know where to begin. They're afraid. They're standing on this pyramid, like they're at the top. They can't leave their post, so to speak. I was there once. I had that, and I worked it. I had good teachers, a good support group. I had a container, and over the years, from the life that I've had opening up to my pain and my vulnerableness and my higher power. Thank God that I was blessed to have a wonderful support group and teachers over the years when I lived in Los Angeles. So again, don't even try to argue. It's useless to try to enlighten an egoistic person in the middle of an argument when you're criticizing them because they can't take it. You're just wasting your time. It's like you're talking over their head and they don't even feel it. So in order for someone to respond, they need to feel it on some level. I'm not saying an overly egoistic person doesn't feel, but they suppress in the moment to protect that survival, that head they created, that person that made them be, armored up here in the shoulders, the chest, the heart, the areas that they think are power, but it isn't. Your power is in your feelings, it's in your body, it's the vulnerable self, it's inside of you. Let me continue here with what we have. So, yeah, so as recognizing an ego would be people that are, complain a lot, they're bitter, they hate. Again, they're over pleasing. They go out of their way to over please and help people because they're looking to be accepted, or they have a lack of self-respect, a lack of self-love. So if you're an over pleaser in a relationship or just helping people out there in the world, overextending your heart, this isn't good, because this is where you can eventually get taken. And again, the ego, once they're the egoistic person, it's very hard for them to undo these layers. If you attack them or try to empower them or help them rebuild, it has to be done under the guidance of someone that is a good counselor, a good coach like myself. And it has to be done under guidance, because these people can fall apart. Remember, they're surviving, or either surviving just a life of loss, or surviving a drug or alcohol addiction habit, surviving loneliness, surviving sexual abuse. And they've built this warmth around themselves. And this is what the ego is. It's like a blanket, but it's false. And it's sad, because these people have really good hearts. They just don't know how to open it. And so they need guidance. Materialism is another recognizing an ego. The accumulation, greed, competition, a need to dominate others. Again, they want to be the controller. Now, an overpowered ego can border on the psychopathic personality, which isn't good, because the psychopathic personality is again, it's a whole nother psychological disorder. So we can rebuild, help these people rebuild. There's a lot of shame from the past in these characters. So we can help them to hold this container to open up and come into the aliveness for real, the authentic self. Also recognizing an ego, dissatisfaction. They're dissatisfied. You can give them a gift or something and they might not like it, or they're dissatisfied. When you receive a gift, you receive a gift. I mean, it's the giving that is what matters. But they don't have that feeling of the heart to say, oh, no matter what you got me, I love it. They go into the ego part of it, the materialistic part. It's not what I wanted. It's not the right brand or whatever. This is sad, folks. Sad. A gift is, the whole idea behind a gift is just the idea of giving. The vanity of self-hatred. The judgments. They judge. They're judgmental. They belittle. They judge. They're judging themselves. They're judging others. They judge others and they belittle others to gain and strengthen the ego. But it dampens their personal growth. It distances them and disconnects them from the soul, the truth, the body pain. Superiority. Of course, they've got to be superior. It's, as we say in psychology, it's the ego type person is a black and white. They fail to see the grays in between, where it's like your way or the highway, or black or white, or right or wrong. But the grays are where we come and again rebuild. We come back to that sacred place to rebuild, to discover who we are, to heal ourselves. You're listening to Discover Joyous Love Mondays with Anita. I used to do this before the pandemic, but I'm back doing it now again after. And my topic today is, are you dating an ego? Now, defensiveness, feeling attacked. Don't attack an egoistic person, because they will tear you down and you will be so intimidated, or you will just have to turn your cheek and accept it. Don't even try to talk to them and enlighten them until they decide to want to be helped by guided by a coach. They have the need for hierarchy and being in control, dualistic, again, the black and white thinking. So one way that Eckhart Tolle put it, an ego that wants something from another and what ego doesn't. So they want something from another, but what ego doesn't will usually play some kind of role to get its needs met, be it material, a sense of power, superiority, or specialness, feeling special, or some kind of gratification. So the overly ego person needs touch. They need touch. They need sensory exercises where my Tantra yoga, Tantra wisdom comes in. They need to open those areas that are dormant in the body, that are distant from the conscious, preconscious, subconscious, or that are in the subconscious. So they need touch, they need love, they need acceptance, but they have to want to help themselves too. They have to want to recognize that awareness to come back to the present moment. Freud talks about the id, super id. Oh, shit. Oh, excuse me. The id, super id, and the id, ego, and super ego. And he talks about that the id is the source of all the psychic energy, the foundation. And the id is like your child, immediate gratification. The child cries and they are wanting to have their needs and desires met. The infant cries, the mother holds the child. They're hungry, they need to be fed. And if we are ruled by this pleasure principle from the time we are a child, then we will be taking from others. So the overpowered id can be criminal, disruptive, and uncontrollable in the adult personality. Continuing here. It's a primal force. It's the ego development and the superego that shape the id. So the childhood love is very important. When a child is young and innocent, the parents need to start to give a lot of attention. Of course, some babies don't get a lot of attention or touch, but the touch is the real important part. Now, the ego is responsible for dealing with reality. Again, we need that. We have to come into the world, the real world. Let's talk about ego and id balance. So the superego emerges from the age of 5. And what the superego teaches us is how to have the right, the wrong, the ideals, the standards. It tries to give us and refine and help us to civilize our character, our behavior, our humanness. So we need to do that. We learn how to become civilized. And it is present in the preconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious. It works to suppress the urges, the impulses, the unnecessary impulses and urges that you may have out there that you would be, say, unbalanced as to, like we have these impulsive urges that then later on we go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It was an impulse. So it works to suppress those impulses. Now, all three must interact. Id, ego, superego. They must all interact. They must be balanced. And of course, this takes a lifetime of work in progress on our human character, personal development. The good ego strength can manage all three. So you need that good ego strength that can manage all three. Too much ego or too little can be unyielding, disruptive, dismissing. So too much or too little can be painful. The over-dominant id, again, is uncontrollable. So somewhere in there, we need to have this balance of all three of these. You're listening to Discover Joyous Love. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, Mondays with Anita, and we are talking today about the ego. My topic is, are you dating an ego? I've certainly dated many egos, but I've been one myself. But now that I'm balanced, I have vulnerableness feeling in my body. Overly dominant superego, they're moralistic and they are judgmental. If they perceive someone to be bad or evil, then they cannot accept it. So they have the superego needs its own set of balance there. And again, we can rebuild ourselves. We can work with rebuilding, creating a skill set, a program that can help you to balance this all out, starting with things such as mindfulness, awareness, exercises like meditation, yoga, anything with the body, dance movement therapy, which I do that. I'm a dance movement therapist. I'm a yoga therapist. I'm a Tantra therapist. I'm a love and relationship coach. And I'm also a psychotherapist. So all of this is one umbrella. And working with the split, the armor that sometimes keeps you governed by your ego. I mean, ego's okay, but overpowering ego can put a damper on your romance, your relationships out there. So the egoistic person, we love you, but we need you to come into your heart, come down into the body, and connect with us. Dissolving the ego, freeing the ego from the pain body. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Discover Joyous Love. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco. And the topic today, are you dating an ego?